Hello, Dr. Chavonne. How are you today?
I am great. How are you, Selena?
Fantastic. I am doing well, and I am so privileged to have you here today. I hope that we have a few people that are going to come in and join us today because I think this is going to be an interesting live. I think all of them have been interesting. So again, thank you. And for those who are joining, are we? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Great. Okay. Okay. You've got to mute that. So let me first start by introducing myself and introducing what this is. So we are episode 6, live on Facebook, something that I decided to do because we are in very unprecedented times here. We are all sort of locked up and we're doing and seeing things differently. And my favorite word is pivot. And I say persevere in very opposing times. So we are pivoting, and we are really happy to speak to people like yourself. Perhaps you can give us some information and help us through this time that we're going through and beyond. So I am, again, Selena Pollard-Scott, a veteran realtor for 26 years. I hate the word veteran, but it is what it is. Love what I do. Live and love what I do, and just want to always bring value to my clients and my friends and my esteemed colleagues. So without further ado, I want to introduce my wonderful esteemed guest here today. I have a little bit of an intro, but you guys need to know who she is because you need to know you're talking to some people here. Okay. You see, I wore my pearls today. There's a reason I wore my pearls. Okay. So Dr. Chavonne Perreault is she is a life and marriage coach who helps women and couples develop the mindset to create happy marriages. She believes the quickest path to improving a marriage starts with assessing the way we as individuals can think differently, grow, and evolve as a way of strengthening our relationships rather than needing our spouses to change. I think a lot of us are guilty of that. Her clients not only learn how to do things differently, but how to be different in their marriages by redefining expectations, positioning themselves to receive what they want, and creating contentment in the here and now. Dr. Chavonne, a little bit about her past is trained as a social science researcher. She received her doctorate from the Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health and focused her research on communication and intimate partnerships. She is the author of Voices in Your Ear, New Confirmations to Transform Your Mind and Renew Your Marriage, and is also the founder of Relatable, which is a coaching practice that provides virtual coaching to women and couples seeking a combination of Christian faith guidance and transformational coaching tools.
It's a mouthful, right?
Welcome, Dr. Chavonne. Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Appreciate you so much. So I want to start by talking about COVID and talking about how you may have seen this impact on your practice. Are you hearing different things now than you heard pre-COVID from the couples that you are currently coaching?
Yeah, great question. So the way that it's impacted my practice is I think it has helped people to elevate and prioritize the things that have sort of been swept under the rug, right? So we're and I'm based in the United States, right?
Yes.
So, and
forgot to say that, guys. Yes.
Yeah, it's okay. But, I live in the Northeast of the United States where when COVID happened, that's where it happened first.
Right.
And so, a lot of my clients, it's sort of like, now we're home. Now, employment might be a little bit topsy-turvy, or hours might be reduced, or I'm working from home all of the time now while also homeschooling. And so the demands that have been placed on families, the demands that have been placed on individuals is at an all-time high. And so whatever was sort of bubbling underneath the surface in terms of communication issues or connection issues or feeling like you're a team, that is one of the biggest things that I think a lot of my clients and my couples are searching. right? Like you add on top of that the chaos and the pandemonium that something like this brings, and it just, illustrates to people how maybe they don't actually have all the tools they need, but the things they could sort of like turn a blind eye to are now really in their face, and they must figure out a way of navigating it better.
So on that note, what would one tool be in your toolkit that you would, just one thing that you would suggest that couples who are facing that, or just, people in relationship even, right? So it could even be, the familial mother, daughter, that type of thing. What's one tool that you think people could use in this time?
Yeah, it's hard to, I'll do like a tool pair, because,
Okay.
it's sort of like two sides of the same coin. And I think one of them is really just being in a place where you are willing to renegotiate the expectations that you've always had, right? So a lot of times we will look at our spouses, and I work with a lot of women, so it's sort of like they'll look at their husband and say, like, he should be doing X, Y, and Z, right? But he's not doing X, Y, and Z. And you've asked him, and you've complained, and you argued about it, right?
And
For
you've
how many
kvetched
months,
and you've done
how
everything.
many years, right? And so many people are resistant to looking at the expectation, right? And challenging the expectation, like, is this even the right expectation to have? And when you're open to doing that, I think what it does is it, opens the door to the other side of this, which is taking responsibility. And the way I like to look at that is like, if it is to be, it's up to me. Meaning, right? Like you can say that in a way that's like resentful, like, I can't depend on this person, or you can say it from a place of empowerment, where it's like, I want this done a certain way. This is a priority for me. And you feel good that it's a priority for you, and also don't mandate that it's a priority for the other person as well. So one of the things, and I talk about this actually, so I have a podcast, and I talked about, it was the first week COVID hit here in the Northeast, and we were like all, at home. And I wrote about how I had an extraordinary week and why that was. And one of the key things was allowing my husband to have his own priorities with how he spent his time, what he did, and also owning my priorities and taking responsibility for them rather than trying to make them his priorities as well.
Was that hard?
It wasn't.
Really?
I mean, well, this is, it is. So here's the thing. I was actually talking with a client about this. The hardest part is making the shift in your mindset. But once you do it, it's the path of least resistance, because otherwise you're always trying to convince, you're always, trying to figure out, how do I explain this in a way that he understands? How do I get him to understand it? Why doesn't he understand it? You spend and you spend and you spend trying to figure out how to move the rock, right? Rather than just like walking 3 extra steps around it and then moving on.
And you I think you made a point, and you said, it's the path of least resistance, merely because it's your mind. It's your mind. You can manage your mind, but you can't manage anybody else's mind, right?
Exactly.
And then you make yourself miserable in the process of doing that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
For sure.
Okay. So, along that path, what I am also seeing, unfortunately, in these times, is I'm actually seeing breakups happening. And so one question I would have for you is, how do you stand for your marriage if your spouse wants to leave?
I literally coached someone on this today, like just a couple of hours ago, right?
Okay.
And here's my perspective on it. I think you have to some degree, allow your spouse to be where they are, right? Like they have a set of experiences, they have a set of beliefs that's leading them to feel like that's the right choice for them, right? And if they leave, like, then obviously you can't drag them back. But I always like to say that in any given moment in your marriage, what is happening is just a snapshot in time, right? It's a snapshot in time. It's one moment in time. And so if what you really desire is to reconcile the marriage, if what you really want is to stand for the marriage, then the way you do that is you become the wife, right? Or the husband, depending on whom it is, that is operating the way you want to operate, right? So just because they've said, I don't want to be in this marriage anymore, doesn't mean that you then have to withdraw. It doesn't mean that you then have to retreat and like go hide and just not be there in the marriage. It also doesn't mean that you need to be aggressive and say, well, if you don't want me, I don't want you either. But there is a place where you really, can position yourself to be aligned to receive the love that you want. It doesn't mean that it happens overnight, but it just means like, if you want to stay, then how do you stay in integrity, right, with who you are? How do you stay in just a place of openness? Like, I'm open to this working. Like, are you, right? And really just allowing that to be the space and to focus on being who you need to be and not trying to convince the other person. Again, with the person I was speaking with today that had this happen, I was like, let's take a look at where you weren't showing up the way you wanted to in the marriage to reach this point. How can you, turn that mirror on yourself for a little bit and just identify, you know what, this is where I fell down. This is where I wasn't, the person that nurtured this relationship the way that it needs to be nurtured. And how can I become that person, not only for the goal of, fixing the marriage and making the marriage come back together, but for the goal of just being the person that I can look in the mirror and say, I'm proud of how I'm showing up.
Right. I like that. I like that a lot. I think a lot of times in relationships, any kind of relationship, we tend to say you this and you that and you this, instead of, as you said, putting the mirror on yourself. But now, what about those relationships where, it appears as though your partner may be abusive or narcissistic? Like, what if it's like these blatant situations? Like, what do you do in that circumstance? How would you counsel somebody, and how do you even know?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think the most important thing to really ask yourself is, like, when you take a big picture look at this relationship, when you lay it all out and you see all the things that are happening, all the experiences you're having, you have to ask yourself, is this something I would choose for myself? Because a lot of times when you're already in it, what's the problem?
The fire alarm just went off in my building. This is great.
Perfect.
So,
right?
There's nothing. Can we stop it? Can we stop the fire alarm? What? Can we stop the fire? Is there a button in here that we don't have a button? Oh,
Yeah,
this is lovely.
You gotta get out, right? Maybe that's a sign to this question, right?
Maybe it
is. For some
is.
people, maybe it's an alarm, which is really what I was asking, right? Like, is this something you would choose for yourself?
Right.
Because it feels like you can't choose it if you're already in it, right? And so I'm going to let you do what you need to do for your safety. I don't, like.
You know what? Well, we don't do anything until, is there something? Yeah, there's nothing. Okay, so we don't really do anything until they come over the loudspeaker.
And tell you to leave.
And tell me what to do. And so I think that this is probably annoying to anybody who might be listening to it. And to my people who are on, thank you for joining us, but I think we should get off this call. Why are you laughing, Chanel? That's not funny, Chanel. Anyway.
I really think it's like a sign for somebody.
I always it took us so long to arrange this, and this happens.
I know.
Wowzer. Anyway, my dear, give me a few minutes. Let's see if we can jump back on. And yeah, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let you go. Okay? All right. Thank you. Ciao.